record to the cloud, so it's starting now. First, I want to apologize because I won't be able to keep my camera on the entire time, which is unorthodox for me, but we've had so many power interruptions at home today that it has messed with my internet signal. And so I'm gonna get, periodically I get unstable connection messages. And so I'm gonna have to turn off my camera at some point, but I'm gonna be sharing resources with you. There's a PowerPoint that we're gonna look at, several videos. You turned in your first graded assignment last week on the weekend. I graded those and returned them to you, and you will have one tonight, which will be due next week, okay? I'd like to start by asking, let me switch the settings so that I mute participants on entry, and you have to unmute yourself when you have something to say. 1 second, that will minimize any background noise that we get. Okay, so just so you know, when everyone comes into the meeting now, you're automatically going to be muted. And if you have a question or comment, you have to unmute your microphone, right? Raise your hand if you know where that function is, at the bottom of your computer screen or your phone, and then you'd have to unmute yourself, okay? So I was saying that I usually start when we do graded assignments by asking the student with the highest grade and the best response to the assignment to share their, in this case, it was a bad news letter that you wrote. And so that person is Demetra Neek. She got the highest grade on this assignment. Her content was good. The letter struck the right tone, which we talked about last week. How do you deliver bad news in a tactful way so that you achieve the objective that you want and you don't offend the recipient, right? And so, as I said, that person is Demetra Neek. So she has volunteered to read her letter. We're going to start with that then. And I want you to pay attention. You can ask any questions. If you have any, I'm happy to answer, me or Demetra Neek. But let's listen to her response to the request for promotion.
Alrighty, my letter was addressed to Nichelle Rogers. She is the head cashier at SMA number 59. It reads, Dear Mrs. Rogers, as per your request for the supervisory position, which includes a promotional increase, we have reviewed your overall monthly assessments and regret to inform you that your request has been denied. After careful review, the following issues have influenced our decision. Your repetitive tardiness, your inability to meet sales goals, and lack of team effort. Although you may have a pleasant attitude, you should exemplify the characteristics of a leader, no matter the position you may be holding. Perhaps attending our training courses that are held every second Saturday in the month can assist with your growth. These courses have helped numerous employees in the years past. We encourage you to take advantage of workshops that are held every Tuesday at 6 p.m., which can help with group socializing, time management schedules, and working as a team. An administrative post requires team effort. One must work well with others in order to meet team goals and deadlines. We do understand that there may be some challenges while working with others, but we encourage you to do the best we know that you are able to do. We are willing to review your application within 1 year and discuss promotional possibilities. We commend you for your continuous efforts and value your hard work made within the past 4 years. We do encourage you to remain focused, motivated, and aim for the best. As our handbook states, if one fails within the team, there is no gain. But if we all fail if we do not raise them up. Sorry. We are here to help. If you have any additional questions pertaining to this letter, please feel free to contact me via email so that we can schedule a meeting.
Okay, so what Demetra Neek did well in this letter, her tone was really professional and encouraging. That's good. Now, some of the content we talked about could have been changed or cut out. There were some grammar and mechanical errors that I pointed out, But what was most important in this assignment is that you strike that balance between meeting the objective and keeping the employee motivated, even as you deliver bad news. She had to make up a lot of stuff because I gave you just the skeleton, right? The bare bones of the assignment. You're denying promotion. The employees' last performance evaluations were just average. And so you had to then kind of create a story around that and write a letter in response to the employee's request. And so she said repeated tardiness was a factor. And it was very important that you pinpoint reasons. You didn't have to tell the full story, but give the employee reasons why. Not, we can't do it at this time, you don't qualify for a promotion, not vague, right? But give the employee clear-cut reasons why the promotion was denied and things that needed to be worked on. And then she provided some coaching. Now, we all know that in the work environment, that may not happen in that way. It would be ideal, but it would not happen in that way. But for purposes of this assignment, which was very structured and asked you to work on delivering bad news, but also coaching, I incorporated those elements, right? It would be awesome if we could all communicate so respectfully, but no, that is ideal. Any questions for me or Dimitri before we move on to our focus for tonight? Can everyone hear me? Because my internet, as I was saying, my internet connection has been bad since about 12 o'clock. My power has been off and on most of the day. I was starting to get worried about tonight. Okay, so in order to share materials with you, I'm going to turn off my video because we need to watch some videos and I want to share PowerPoint, right? So to minimize any interruption, I'm going to try to reduce my bandwidth by shutting off my camera. And I think only Ricardo, well, no, that's a picture of Ricardo on screen. So nobody else is sharing video, which is fine. If you had a moment to look at the syllabus and the plan for this evening, you know that we will focus on summary writing and note-taking, which is a powerful aid in business communication because it is a way of retaining the key points from what you've heard or understood. We often talk about time being money in business, time being valuable, and there's often a pressure to get things done very quickly, and sometimes that's even communication. And so a vital tool or a vital skill that you learn communicating in business is how to condense what is really, 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 really important from a larger work and convey that to an audience. And so that is what our lecture will focus on tonight, how to take effective notes during verbal exchanges so that you can summarize what has been said in face-to-face conversations, over the phone, in group situations, or when you attend a meeting or a lecture. And then we're also going to improve or discuss strategies for improving our active listening skills, since listening is a key part of any communication act. So we have a lot of ground to cover tonight. You're gonna have to take notes. That is the focus of tonight's lesson, and you will put into practice by taking notes of what you think are the most important points conveyed in this lecture. And then we're gonna end by doing some practice together. I'm not gonna put you into breakout rooms tonight, but we will practice on 2 assignments together before I give you the assignment tonight, which asks you to summarize a larger piece of writing and submit that for your second grid. Firstly, I want to briefly talk to you about what good note-taking and summary writing involve and why are they important. Simply put, you are concisely recording important information so that you can recall it later. Regardless of how good you think your memory is, you may have the best memory in the world, but you're going to need to take notes in certain situations to remind yourself of what is said. It's a mistake to think if you're going to a meeting or a lecture that you will remember the details of what has been said and be able to convey that to somebody else or be able to act on that, right, to achieve some company objective. You may remember the overall topic of discussion. You may remember some specific points, but you're not going to remember everything. Being able to convey the essence of something that is, say, 40 or 60 pages long is extremely important. Often we come across documents as long in business, right? Think about annual reports. And we had an assignment. We had an assignment of very first business case. I think we did that on the first or second week of class, where a sales manager was preparing for a meeting and presented the participants of the meeting with something that was 60 pages or so long, or even longer, and expected them to be able to offer feedback, right? So we've already seen how not being able to condense information can negatively impact communication. For one, summary and note-taking is important because it saves time, right? People more and more today are unwilling to read long verbose documents. People can't even stand to talk to another person if the conversation just seems to drone on, or the person just seems to move from one point to the next endlessly. People have shorter and shorter attention spans today. And so you want to write something. If you're tasked with summarizing or preparing a larger piece of communication and then having to condense or take out only what is salient or most important, you want to write something that is both factual and detailed, but you don't want to bore the reader so that you lose their attention. Good note-taking and summary writing is a matter of critical reading closely to understand, and you will follow certain steps. Or I want you to keep in mind certain tips that will be useful in a situation like this. So I want to share a PowerPoint with you. And I haven't emailed this yet, but I will email it to you after class, that talks about what a summary is and why this skill is important. Okay, let me make this full screen. That's better. So what this slide conveys is that a summary has several goals or purposes. For one, you need to record the essential points. And two, you need to do it in a way that is clear, well organized, and easy to understand. You write from what we call a kind of audience-centered approach, because the person for whom you are summarizing, your audience, has not seen the document that you are summarizing. So it is your job to give them a clear understanding of what they have not seen. Give me 1 second, please. I need to close this window. It's creating a lot of breeze. 1 second. Sorry about that. And this is no easy task, to condense something so that it is understandable to a person who's not seeing the text. The first thing you want to do is to scan the text. A lot of people believe that summary writing begins by reading, and to an extent it does, but the first step in reading is doing some scanning. And when you're scanning, you're looking for certain things. I want you to write down step 1, which is to scan. So you look for headings, subheadings, you look for key sections. Basically, what you're trying to do is get a feel for how the information is organized so that you will break the text down into sections. This will help you to better understand how the text is organized. What is the author's plan? How does this text flow? And how is the information organized? That is important because what you produce should be complete and concise. It shouldn't read as though you took this or extracted this condensed version from a longer piece that is now choppy and there are gaps in the text. That's not the impression that you want to give. Summary writing also involves some, as I said, critical reading. You're going to have to do a second thing, and that is distinguish between major and minor details. Since the summary records only the essential points of the oral communication, that means you will have to sort through this information, determine what is necessary, what is not, and then discard what you don't deem necessary, right? You take out minor examples, details, illustrations, elaborations, and this goes for somebody who might be listening to a lecture, right? Or a speech as well. That's another form of oral communication. Your mind is doing some critical exercises. You are sorting through and storing this information for later. And as you're attempting to condense the text, one of the things you need to be very, very careful of is that you don't misrepresent main ideas. For whatever reason, this isn't skipping to the next slide. You don't want to misrepresent the main points of the text. You are using your own words, not quotes from the original. When you do this graded exercise, I'm not looking for quotes and whole phrases taken from the original. You will use entirely your own words. In order to be good and effective at summary writing, you have to be a good listener. And so as you are listening, there are a lot of things that are barriers to us taking in information. And we're going to look at some of those, some of the distractions that we face, some of the things that prevent us from really absorbing information in important settings. And we'll talk about how to eliminate some of them. The information that I just shared with you, those steps, sorting information, separating main points, scanning the text first. And that's more a reading exercise. Some of the notes that I review with you, some of the points work for both oral and written communication. Some of those steps may seem very familiar to you, and they should be. You've probably been writing summaries since high school, or summarizing without even realizing it. Your mind is sorting through information as you listen to me right now. But listening is very different from writing. Believe it or not, it is harder to take in information as we listen than it is as we are reading, because we can review written communication over and over until we have gotten the point, right? In situations where we are listening to a lecture, a live speech, or we're in a situation, we're in a meeting and we're taking notes to devise an action plan later, we can't necessarily replay that meeting. We can't replay that lecture unless it's recorded in a setting like this, and it often is not. So that means that we're going to have to be not only critical readers, but critical listeners, active listeners. So we're going to spend some time talking about what active listening is. If, for instance, you are in a meeting with a customer and you're trying to find out what his or her needs are, how the company can best meet these needs, why is he or she displeased with the level of service that you're offering, this is where active listening comes in. A degree of empathy and humility is required, yes, but we also have to be focused on that person so that our own opinions, our biases, our judgments, and the barriers that impact effective communication don't prevent us from listening. So I'm going to ask you a question. What do you think, especially today in this technology-driven world, prevents us from being good listeners? And this could be in a business setting or in terms of personal communication. What are some of the things that stop us from being effective listeners? It happens. I've seen certain negative behaviors. I'm guilty of some of them myself. And I have to kind of coach myself to stop and doing certain things in conversation. But what do you think it is? What are some of these barriers to communication that I'm going to address based on your experience? Or what is it that points out to you that someone is not really listening? How do you know? Did I lose my class?
When you ask them a question and they're not able to respond.
When you hear crickets, the teacher's worst nightmare. People are not listening, yes. What about, that is in a more formal setting, yes. We see it in informal communication or personal communication as well. But how many of you have had the experience of talking to someone and you can't get a word in, or before you finish your point, they interrupt you?
Yeah, I was just about to say that. I have an experience with a certain person I work with.
Mm-hmm.
Every time you try to explain something,
Mm-hmm.
she literally stops you. Like, she starts talking while I'm talking, and then she caused me to lose my point. And then at the end of the conversation, I didn't get anything across because she's not listening to understand me. I think she's just trying to get her point across.
Mm-hmm.
So I honestly, I just don't like talking to her.
It is very frustrating because it sends your opinion doesn't value impression. It is one of the rudest things that people do. It is one of the biggest barriers to communication. And often the result is exactly what the student just said. I don't want to talk to you. And that happens in personal relationships too. You're trying to talk over something with your spouse and they're interrupting you or you're interrupting them until communication totally breaks down and nothing gets resolved. Nothing gets resolved, or you're at work. I remember being a very young member of faculty at UB. I started teaching at UB at 26 or 27. And my colleagues were in their 40s and 50s, late 40s, 50s, some nearing retirement. And anyone knows that a young person joining a new environment has to prove him or herself. Whether that is directly stated or just implicitly felt, it is there, that expectation that you have to prove yourself. And I remember being in larger department meetings and sharing ideas, because we always, as faculty members, talk about how to increase enrollment, more majors in our school, student engagement and activities that we plan. And I had the experience one day of offering a suggestion and nobody replied. And so I thought, okay. And immediately after, a senior member of staff said basically what I said, like offered the same suggestion, and it got so much positive feedback. And quiet me, old me, would have just sat there and not said anything. At this point, I'd been in the school for several months and I was annoyed. And so I spoke up and I said, I literally just said that. But that proves people don't listen. Whether we realize it or not, our ability to take in advice and suggestions and input from other people is an extension of how we value them. At least they interpret it in that way. And often when we don't show them the appropriate value and respect, then communication breaks down. And so when people talk over other people, the suggestion is what I have to say is more important than what you're trying to say. And I don't have time to listen to you. And it's offensive. And so I'm going to ask you to take notes about these communication barriers, things that cause communication to break down. These behaviors that demonstrate that we are not listening actively. And then we're going to watch a video that explains exactly what active listening is and how we show that we are actively listening for positive feedback, right? Actively listening for more engagement from our audience, right? And also engagement from us in the activity or communication exercise that we're involved in. So the first barrier, the first thing that stops us from really being able to listen and focus today is information overload. And we see this in different ways. Information overload may be something that I fear I'm in danger of, which is why I try to break up my online sessions with videos and more interactive exercises, because I can only share so much with you before I lose your attention, before you zone out, before your device becomes more interesting, what's on TV becomes more interesting. We are competing with so many different things for our attention, right? We have more knowledge and information that we know what to do with in this 21st century. And so with that information overload, our brains are always going. And we're thinking and overthinking. And so it becomes really hard then to sit, focus on another person, their words, their ideas, their concerns. So that is the first barrier to communication that I want you to make note of. And a lot of these points are in your text. I'm again summarizing what the chapter readings from your text, the most important points from those readings. The next one is that we're too preoccupied. We are more and more a society of narcissists, and narcissism seems to be the watchword today. Everyone is a narcissist. People are just throwing the word around, but what does that mean and what is contributing to that? We are so involved in our appearance, our life, our world, our concerns, that we really have very little time for other people. And more, the way our society is structured, we are encouraged to be more insular and more self-centered. And we see this in social communication, and we see it in business communication as well. In social communication, we see people taking photos of everything and sharing it online, from their meal to their latest trip to, I have a friend, if she finds an avocado, she posted, when she cuts the avocado open and it's really green, that is a picture for Facebook. But this focus on ourselves and what is important to us is forcing us to lose focus on other people. And you have to be focused on other people to be a good listener. And so we are in many ways becoming a society of narcissists. Or I'm going to share my photo. Oh, this photo looks Instagram worthy. Let me put this up. Let me see how many likes I'm going to get. I have a friend who says, let me get my likes together as a joke, right? But this overwhelming concern for ourselves and our issues in communication prevents us from being more people-centered, which is key if we're going to be good listeners. That means that even in communication, we are so concerned about ourselves and what we are going to say next that we don't even listen to what the other person is saying. We are only thinking about our next point. again, that really narcissistic approach, but listening takes concentration, right? And it is extremely difficult to actually hear, to actively listen to what someone else is saying when we're busy formulating our responses. We're just waiting for that pause or that break in the conversation to make the point. We think that only happens in argument. No, not necessarily. That can happen in a very structured environment, particularly when you're in a meeting and people want to prove themselves. And they want to emphasize that they too have value in this organization, that people start talking over each other and showboating, and that's not really communicating or effectively or actively listening. Another thing is the level of distractions. We talked about information overload earlier, but one other communication barrier is the number of distractions we are faced with today. Other people at work, we all have that co-worker who's like the bad child in school, who would finish his or her work first and then walk around and distract everyone else. Or that co-worker that talks too loudly, that shares too much personal information, the joker who prevents everybody else from getting their work done. Or those distractions could come from electronic devices. As I was saying earlier, our own competing thoughts too. All this focus on ourselves, but more and more we are distracted. I remember when I was a student in high school, and we talk way back in the 90s, our teachers had to compete for our attention because we were doing things like passing notes in class or talking behind our books to our classmates or just mentally zoned out. Today, teachers have to compete for students' attentions because they're smuggling devices. They are on Facebook in class and on WhatsApp in class and watching videos. And you compete in the sense that you have to make them see the value of what you're sharing, make them see that it's more valuable than the allure of whatever is on that device. And that is a challenge because the kinds of things that we're talking about tonight, summary and note-taking, may seem mundane, right? I don't care about this stuff, this is boring, but it's good old-fashioned knowledge. It may not be condensed to 40 words or 140 words. I don't even have a Twitter account, so I don't know what it is. I do know that you have to make your communication brief. It's not somebody blasting another person on Facebook, so it's not as exciting as that, but it is good old-fashioned knowledge. And more people are being made to feel that it has to be spicy and saucy in order for it to be good. And so teachers are competing with these more exciting, shorter forms of communication that aren't necessarily as beneficial, but because they're catchy and they're hip and they're now, students are drawn to it, right? In addition to distractions, another communication barrier, our own prejudices. When we're listening to someone, we formulate ideas and opinions about what they say. We don't agree with them, and those ideas are rolling over in our mind. And so we're not even focused on what they're saying. We are too busy thinking about all the reasons why they're wrong or why we don't agree with their opinion. And then finally, and this is something that I need to keep in mind too, the rate of speech versus thought, the ratio between the two. Most of us can speak about 100, 125 words a minute. But our brains are able to filter and process about 700 words a minute. So what does that mean? It means that we can process far more than we are actually hearing. And to us, it may sound like a lie. Someone may be formulating a thought or expressing a thought, and our brains, as we listen to them, are already finishing it. And so it seems like they're moving slowly. And when we're not getting that fast interaction that we've been trained to get, that quick, condensed bit of information that we've been trained to get because of our engagement with social media, we tune out because it's not as exciting. But again, all of these points, distractions, information overload, or because we are living in what we call the information age. We have access to so much now. Even sorting through what is valuable online, what is valuable knowledge, when we're surfing the internet or using social media, even that involves some degree of critical thinking, some summary and sifting through information. How do we eliminate these barriers and the distractions, the personal biases that prevent us from really listening to people? How do we prevent that? And that is, let me stop to share what this video that I want us to watch will talk about. Let me find the link. It's a short video that defines active listening, which sounds like an oxymoron, right? Listening seems far more passive. What is active listening? Does that mean that we need to be more physically active, mentally active? We're gonna listen to, we're gonna listen to some key points from this video. Let me share this with sound so that everyone can hear it.
Talk about active
challenges. Can everyone hear that? Go back.
We're going to talk about active listening skills. So let's get into the details. Hey there, I'm Alex Lyon, and I actually have a 1-hour course on effective listening skills for leaders. I will tell you more about that at the end of the video. So listening is so important because good listening is probably the easiest way to connect with other people and build relationships. Active listening is the opposite of passive listening, and you have probably experienced this. The person you're talking to might technically be hearing some of what you're saying, but they are tuned out. They're on autopilot. They're just not mentally engaged with what you're saying. And as the speaker, this can be very dissatisfying, very discouraging when people really aren't paying attention to us. Like, why am I even talking in the first place? But active listening looks, sounds, and feels obvious. Active listening means listening completely. But before anybody does that well, there are two secrets, two prerequisites to active listening. Number one, you have to commit. You have to put aside whatever else might be distracting you and make listening a real priority. Good listening is first and foremost a choice that you make every time somebody speaks. Number two, it takes practice. Like any skill, you have to work at it. The good news is that listening is not mysterious or complicated. So let's talk about 4 qualities of active listening that you can put into practice. First, active listening involves nonverbal communication. And there are 2 sides to this. On the one hand, you're demonstrating that you're engaged and paying attention nonverbally. You put your devices completely away, you make eye contact, your body posture is open and oriented toward the other person. Now on the other side, you're also noticing the speaker's nonverbal cues. There's an expression, you listen with your eyes. And part of that means you're noticing what's happening with the person visually on their mood or their emotion that they're showing. Do they look nervous, frustrated, annoyed? You can pick up on that by actively observing their nonverbal communication. Second, active listening involves verbal communication. Again, there are 2 sides to this. The most obvious part is asking good questions. Probably the most common pattern that good listeners demonstrate is that they ask a good question and then they let the speaker fully answer it. Like a good mental health therapist will ask thoughtful questions and then stop talking for a while and let the client speak. Honestly, what we're paying for in many cases is just somebody to listen carefully to us. So a good question is a huge part of the listening pie. And the other part of verbal communication is those small utterances that show the other person that we're following them, like, I hear you, yeah, that makes sense. Sometimes it's not even full words. It might just be, oh. Those little utterances keep us engaged and show the other person that we're following. Third, active listening involves responding to what somebody just said. So the pattern goes like this. You ask a question, they respond for however long that takes, and at the end of that talking term, you give an informed response to them. So let's say you just ask a person what they've been up to lately. That's your question. And in their talking turn, they tell you that they have been doing diving lately. So you actively listen for a while they're talking. And at the end of their talking turn, it's your turn again. And this is where you show that you were actively following along and were interested in what they were saying. And you can do this by reflecting back what you just heard. You might say something like, wow, that sounds like an exciting sport. That's really cool that you're doing that. Or you could ask another follow-up question. I had no idea that you were into diving. How did you first get into that? Of course, you could do a little bit of both, like I just did. You could make an informed, reflective statement and then ask a follow-up question. The key is to respond to what they have just been saying. What you don't want to do is just look at them blankly and not react when they're done talking. And you've probably had somebody do this to you. You tell them about part of your day or something about your life, and they don't react. They just have this stone face. That's not active listening. If you want a gold star for active listening, then you have to respond to what they just said. Fourth, keep the focus on them and let them talk. Now, this one might seem obvious because you're listening, but when you decide to go into that listening mode, just make a decision that this is going to be all about the other person talking and not about you. Resist that temptation to jump in with your own story or to change the subject to your favorite topic. Keep your talking turns and questions concise, and then stick to whatever topic they're interested in. Now, eventually, once they've done plenty of talking, there will usually be an opportunity later in the conversation for you to share your experiences. But my rule of thumb is to dedicate at least the first half of the conversation to pure active listening. So I hope these 4 tips help you listen completely in your next conversation. Question of the day, which one of these tips do you need the most work on? I would love to read what you have to say below in that comment section. And I do have 2 follow-up videos on listening coming soon.
Okay, so those tips relate more to when we're in conversation, when we want to communicate and we want to give a good impression about ourselves. We give the impression that we are indeed listening and we're interested in the other person. How does that relate to what we do or how we communicate in a business setting? We do have conversations at work. We do have professional engagements outside the office where we want to give the best impression of ourselves, and those kinds of communication skills come in handy. But one of the key things that the video emphasized is that one of the most important types of listening skills which is active listening, involves hearing. Hearing what is said and noticing nonverbal communication too. We tend to focus so much on written communication or the words that someone says, oral communication, that we don't realize that a great part of what we are communicating is nonverbal. These silent messages that we send, so facial expressions, posture, other body language, the negative messages that we send to other people that we're in conversation with or in a meeting with that suggest, I can't be bothered to listen to what you are saying. It is not important to me. I am bored by this whole discussion. Think about the following example, how that illustrates how nonverbal communication is important, and it communicates so much more in some cases than our words do. So imagine that you are noticing a change in your coworker's attitude, or they're acting different, or their performance may be suffering. And so you ask if there's a problem. You approach the person, you feel comfortable enough, you ask, is there an issue? And the employee may verbally say, everything is fine, no, I don't have a problem. But you notice that this person has their arms folded, they can't make eye contact with you, they replied with a short no. If you're actively listening, you're picking up on these nonverbal cues, and you know that despite what they've communicated with their mouth, there is indeed something wrong. Right? Now, getting them to open up and reveal what that something wrong is another class. Right? But that emphasizes how broad communication is. And it's not always a matter of what we say with our mouths or what we write down. Often our body sends messages. So there's certain things that we do, even in conversation. If we're in a meeting, if we're in a seminar, if we're at work, there's certain things that we do that suggest, whether in one-on-one situations or group settings, that we can be productive, that we're engaged. One of the first things is you try to make eye contact, whether you're the speaker, and these tips are good if you're the speaker, like if you have to make a presentation, and you will in this class. Some of you may have to do this in customer service, all right? You engage with people one-on-one all the time. How do you show that they are important to you and you are people-centered in your approach? So you do things like you try to look people in the eye. I had an experience of watching a documentary most recently, and the person being interviewed couldn't look at the camera. And I got the sense that they just were being dishonest. It was one of these true crime serials, and because they couldn't look directly at the camera, and even though it wasn't a conversation directly with me, I considered myself a part of their audience. But because they couldn't make eye contact with the audience, I immediately disbelieved them. When people don't look at us directly, we think that they're not trustworthy. We think that they're hiding something. And by extension, we think that they're not interested in what we have to say, right? In another setting, let's say if it's a more formal communication at work, that someone can't look you in the eye, we get the sense that no, they're not interested. Another thing is you pay attention to your body language. You use what we call positive body language. The speaker talked about nodding or smiling to show that you're engaged in the conversation, that you understand and you know the importance of listening. When you do things like you fold your arms, it suggests certain things. It puts like a kind of block, right? There is this kind of defensiveness. You seem impatient. You seem unwillingness to accept what is being said. All of this is being communicated outside of your words, but not outside of your control, because you can be aware of these behaviors. And then you look at the person who's speaking, you observe their body language, the person talking to you. This is a critical part of active listening as well. What does their body language reveal? Does it match what is being said? Remember the experience I just gave of watching the documentary, the true crime documentary, and not trusting the person who was giving his account of what happened because he couldn't look at the camera? Their body language was saying one thing, and their words were saying something totally different, sending a contradictory message. If the two don't match, we form interpretations and ideas about, we make interpretations, and we might draw conclusions about the person that we're talking to. And then we really need to be engaged. And what does that mean? People use that word so much, engagement. I say it to my students all the time. You're not engaged with the text. You're not engaged with this reading. You're not engaged in the class. What does that word mean? It doesn't mean that step before marriage. It implies a degree of connection. Instead of focusing on all of the distractions around you, you make it clear that what the speaker is saying, what the person that you're talking to is saying, has your undivided attention through some of these cues that we give, and most importantly, not interrupting, right? We understand intuitively when people interrupt us that we're sending negative messages. What I have to say is more important. I'm not interested. I don't have time for your opinion. This isn't a conversation. It's a contest, and I'm determined to win. All of these things break down communication. And then another thing that the video emphasized is the need to ask questions, but you wait for the appropriate moment to ask questions. Sometimes we have been taught so much in our society that certain behaviors show engagement. I often think about students who are eager to ask that question and they just interrupt. Mistakes. And I have to say 1 second. You wait for the appropriate pause in the conversation. Even that shows respect for the other person, right? And gets you a favorable response. So listening effectively, the speaker referred to as a commitment. It takes time and effort. It's not something that is haphazard. It's not something that we do just once. It takes time to develop and improve, but it increases the quality of your relationships, and it increases the respect that people have for you, right? Their perception of you is more favorable if you develop these skills. We hear people talk about other people being great listeners all the time. What does that mean? Does that mean, I think we often take it to mean the person lets me pour out my heart and I say everything that's on my chest and they listen to the entire thing. No, that's not what great listening is. It is about a kind of empathetic, let me listen, take in, and respond, right? So we've been focusing on, for the last 15 to 20 minutes or so, even though I started by saying we're going to talk about summary writing, we've been talking about the importance of listening in another context. We're going to switch to applying some of these listening skills in a more academic setting, a more focused setting. How do you eliminate distractions? How do you really focus to take in what is being said, so that you can inform somebody else, so that you can meet a desired objective, so that you can take from whatever this communication activity is, so that you can take something more beneficial from that, and grow from it. So we're going to move to summary writing, or listening with the intent of summarizing and telling somebody else what you learned, or telling somebody else what you understood, all right? I want to go back to the PowerPoint that I shared with you earlier and look at, and as I said, I'm going to send this to you. We're going to look at, it talks about some of the critical reading. How do you improve your critical reading skills? What are some of the scanning techniques when you are reading a text, as you will have to for your summary exercise, but actually writing the summary, because we're going to focus on listening, but with the intent of writing, as I said. And so I want to share the last two slides on this PowerPoint. Which talks about how you should structure the summaries that you will have to do. So one will be based on a listening exercise, and one will be based on a reading exercise, the practice activities that we will do in class, okay? And these are just general tips for summary writing, how I want you to structure the assignment that you're going to turn in later this week. How do you convey to somebody who has not seen the text that you have the essence of this text, the main points? How do you structure your summary? How should your paragraph or paragraphs be structured? You need that contextual sentence. What are you summarizing? The name of the text, the name of the writer, those kinds of practical things that come at the beginning of your summary. I said several times that you only focus on the main ideas conveyed, And then because this is a summary, you don't include personal opinions or interpretations or commentary. That should sound familiar to you because we were just talking about the need to move beyond that when someone is talking, to not let our own opinions, interpretations, and commentary stop us from effectively listening, or as we're reading, stop us from really understanding the writer's viewpoint. Okay, and so those kinds of personal judgments don't figure into a summary, which is why you leave them out even when you're listening. You don't let them cloud your judgment or stop your level of engagement with the text. And then the importance of note taking. So when you are listening to the video that you're going to summarize in a few minutes, I want you to begin by taking notes in your own words of what you think are the main points of the video. And the reason you make these notes in your own words is because the ability to take something and translate it into language that you have devised, language that is more natural to you, demonstrates that you really understood. It's a kind of reflection or mirroring that the speaker talked about. What we were essentially doing is borrowing from the text, but in this academic setting, you're using your own words to simplify and help somebody else understand, right? So you note take in your own words, and from those notes, you will then write your cohesive summary. When we talk about cohesion, we mean something that sticks together. Remember I said earlier, it shouldn't read as though it's disjointed. The text that you will summarize, the written text, is about 600 words long. You'll be asked to condense that to 1/3 of its length. But in reading that summary, if I were grading it, I shouldn't get the sense that 400 words have been left out, and what you have given me, your version of the main point, sounds choppy and disjointed. All right, so cohesion is very important. And then after you've taken your notes, you combine those notes into paragraphs that flow. And that is how you ensure this summary is unified. And that is also how you ensure that somebody else coming behind you to read it can understand the points that you're making. Because as we were talking about earlier, when you listen, your mind is sorting. When you're reading, your mind is sorting. Your mind is also anticipating how words should flow and what is logical organization, right? And so the thing with writing is somebody coming behind you doesn't quite know what's in your head. It is your job to help them to grasp the main ideas in a way that is understood by them, in a way that they anticipate, right? If it is illogical and disjointed and disorganized and it doesn't follow what the audience needs, then you've not met the objectives of the summary, right? Or the objectives of this exercise. And so your paragraphs shouldn't be cluttered. You want them to be unified so that somebody coming behind you can clearly see how sentence 1 is connected to sentence 2, it's connected to sentence 3, it's connected to sentence 4, it's cohesive and reads like a unit at the end of it, right? Okay, so now that is a lot to share and that is a lot to do. So we're gonna start by doing a listening exercise first, and then you will have to summarize. I'm gonna play the recording several times and allow you to jot down the main points. Because it is a recording, because it's difficult to listen, because we're distracted, I'm going to play it more than once, right? And then we're going to talk about what was important, what should have been conveyed, what should have been taken down as noteworthy, as a main point. And then the second practice exercise that we're going to do involves a written summary. All right, let me find my link. Okay, so remember you're making notes, but these notes need to be in your own words, right? So this is a video about leadership styles, different kinds of leadership styles. And I give you the topic of the video so that as you are listening, anything related to leadership styles, you take note of, because you know it relates to the objective of the text, all right? Sorry. So let me share. Now remember, you're working on this individually. This is not for a grade, but you will have to do a graded assignment like this for next week.
Leaders exercise their authority in a variety of different ways. The way that leaders choose to show their power and authority is described as a leadership style. Leadership styles relate to the way that a leader behaves and the way that the functions of leadership are carried out. First up, there is democratic leadership. This is a type of leadership style in which members of the group are involved in the decision-making process.
I just want to stop for a minute to point out that whether we realize it or not, there's certain things competing for our attention in this video, right? So we have some graphics on screen, colors, people emerging from these drawings, and they're meant to complement the message of the text, but they can be really distracting as well. And so you're going to have to sort through and filter out even that information that's meant to enhance the video, all right?
An example of this is allowing employees to vote on decisions that are being made. There are many advantages of democratic leadership, such as employees being better prepared for a promotion, because they have already had to make harder decisions. As well as this, employees are more able to accept changes within the organization, as they are aware of why changes are being made, due to being involved in the decision-making process. Some of the disadvantages of democratic leadership include issues like the time it may take for a decision to be made, or that a strong leader is often needed to lead a discussion between staff members, so that there is clear communication of ideas. Next up is autocratic leadership, also known as authoritarian leadership, which is a leadership style where one person has control over all decisions and where there is little input from group members. Autocratic leaders typically make choices based on their ideas and judgments and rarely accept advice from employees in the organization. Some of the advantages of autocratic leadership styles include that decisions can be made quickly due to managers making all the decisions. As well as this, employees have clear instructions on what needs to be done and the requirements needed, which can improve efficiency within the business. Some of the disadvantages of autocratic leadership include issues such as employees' creativity and ideas being ignored. As well as this, employees may start to feel demotivated because they are not getting to share their ideas or take on any responsibility. Lastly, there is laissez-faire leadership, also known as delegative leadership, is a type of leadership style in which leaders are hands-off and allow group members to make the decisions. Researchers have found that this is generally the leadership style that leads to the lowest productivity among employees and is often ineffective. Some of the advantages of laissez-faire leadership are that employees are likely to feel empowered and motivated by the responsibility being given to them. As well as this, it increases the chances of innovation if employees feel confident and are not being micromanaged. Some of the disadvantages of laissez-faire leadership include issues such as employees feeling under pressure if they are not being supported when having to make important decisions. This often leads to employees feeling demotivated and stressed. As well as this, it may not be clear who is responsible, which could lead to a decision not being made. You might ask, which leadership style is the most effective? This answer usually depends on the type of business. For example, a business that is trying to survive and needs to make quick decisions is likely to need an autocratic leader. However, a lot of businesses are moving towards a more democratic approach to leadership. This is due to increased competition in most industries, meaning that businesses need to be innovative when making key decisions. I hope this has been helpful. Please subscribe for more business studies videos.
Okay, we're not gonna subscribe. You should have already begun sorting through the information, right? Your mind should be looking for certain things as main points. What do you think some of the main points are? Some of them are more obvious than others. Obviously, this video is about leadership styles. And so in your first set of notes, you should have jotted down what points.
The different types of leadership styles.
Okay, so the different types. So you have laissez-faire, democratic, he lists them. So at the very basic level, after I first listen to the video, you should have a list of those leadership styles. But your notes should go deeper than that. For each type of leader, he lists, or leadership style, he lists benefits and disadvantages. And so your notes also need to include those. What are the benefits and disadvantages of each style? And then he also tells us why businesses are moving to or gravitating towards certain styles of leadership. So we're going to listen to it again. I'm going to give you time to jot down notes. I'm going to stop at key points so that you take comprehensive notes, and then we'll share with the class what you gleaned from the video. So let's start it again.
Leaders exercise their authority in a variety of different ways. The way that leaders choose to show their power and authority is described as a leadership style. Leadership style.
Okay, so we have a definition of leadership style that you want to jot down.
Styles relate to the way that a leader behaves and the way that the functions of leadership are carried out. First up, there is democratic leadership. This is a type of leadership style in which members of the group are involved in the decision-making process.
So we have a definition of the very first type, democratic, which we're familiar with, right? It's often used in politics as well. We know what that means. This is the first style that he focuses on. So what is democratic leadership?
An example of this is allowing employees to vote on decisions that are being made. There are many advantages of democratic leadership, such as employees being better prepared for a promotion, because they have already had to make harder decisions. As well as this, employees are more able to accept changes within the organization, as they are aware of why changes are being made, due to being involved in the decision-making process. Some of the disadvantages of democratic leadership.
So he lists several advantages before he moves on to disadvantages. So you should have, he moves really quickly, but you should have at least the main points, right? Notes related to those 2 or 3 advantages that he just shared.
Leadership include issues like the time it may take for a decision to be made, or that a strong leader is often needed to lead a discussion between staff members, so that there is clear communication of ideas.
And then he moves on to the disadvantages.
Next up is autocratic leadership, also known as authoritarian leadership, which is a leadership style where one person has control over all decisions and where there is little input from group members.
Okay, so what is autocratic or authoritarian leadership? That should be your next note.
Autocratic leaders typically make choices based on their ideas and judgments and rarely accept advice from employees in the organization. Some of the advantages of autocratic leadership styles include that decisions can be made quickly due to managers making all the decisions. As well as this, employees have clear instructions on what needs to be done and the requirements needed, which can improve efficiency within the business. Some of the disadvantages of autocratic
So you should have noted the advantages of having someone make all the decisions, which is an autocratic leadership style. And then he moves on to the disadvantages of this kind of authoritarian
leadership
approach.
include issues, such as employees' creativity and ideas being ignored. As well as this, employees may start to feel demotivated because they are not getting to share their ideas or take on any responsibility. Lastly, there is laissez-faire leadership, also known as delegative leadership, is a type of leadership style in which leaders are hands-off and allow group members to make the decisions.
Laissez-faire. Whenever I hear this term, I always think of lazy, which is the root from which this word is formed, which is where we get that word lazy from. And we associate this type of leadership with a lazy person who just delegates and gives everyone responsibility.
Researchers have found that this is generally the leadership style that leads to the lowest productivity among employees and is often ineffective. Some of the advantages of laissez-faire leadership are that employees are likely to feel empowered and motivated by the responsibility being given to them. As well as this, it increases the chances of innovation if employees feel confident and are not being micromanaged. Some of the disadvantages of laissez-faire leadership include issues, such as employees feeling under pressure if they are not being supported when having to make important decisions. This often leads to employees feeling demotivated and stressed. As well as this, it may not be clear who is responsible, which could lead to a decision not being made. You might ask, which leadership style is the most effective? This answer usually depends on the type of business. For example, a business that is trying to survive and needs to make quick decisions is likely to need an autocratic leader. However, a lot of businesses are moving towards a more democratic approach to leadership. This is due to increased competition in most industries, meaning that businesses need to be innovative when making key decisions. I hope this has been helpful.
Okay. All right. Do we need to listen to that a third time, or are people able to volunteer their main points? What did you glean from the text? Do we need to listen to it a third time? It's a short video, so we can. In this democratic style with my democratic, in this democratic class, with my democratic leadership style, I'm asking students for input.
I could give mine.
Okay. Sorry,
Okay,
something's
so
going on with my throat. You don't have to do all of them, but tell me which points you jotted down. I'm out of my Zoom screen, so I can't see who's talking to me. Who's that, please?
Chanel,
Chanel. Okay.
you just want my point?
Yes. What did you come up with? And anyone who has something different or more can add to what Chanel said.
Okay, so I got that leadership style is the way leaders exercise authority and power, and that there are several leadership styles. The democratic leadership, which allows employees to make decisions, and a benefit is that employees are more acceptable to change because they were a part of the decision-making process, and they are better prepared for a promotion. An issue would be the time it takes for a decision to be made, and I also got the autocratic leadership was when one person has control over all decisions with little to no input from others, and they rarely accept advice from others. Some benefits of this are decisions are quickly made because managers make all the decisions, and employees have clear instruction on what needs to be done. A disadvantage would be that employees' creativity are ignored, or they may feel demotivated, not being able to share ideas or take on responsibility. And then I got the I hope I said that enough.
Laissez-faire.
Laissez-faire, yeah, hands-off leadership and allows employees to make decisions which leads to low productivity and is very ineffective. But the advantages would be employees feel motivated with the responsibility given to them, and this could increase innovation. A disadvantage would be employees feel under pressure because they don't feel supported in their decisions. Um, and that these leadership styles may or may not be effective depending on the type of business, but many business are moving towards a democratic approach.
Wow, Chanel was listening. So Chanel got all the main points, which is excellent. But something was sacrificed because you were taking notes so quickly. What was sacrificed? Who caught on? And believe it or not, it would lower your grade, as complete as the summary is.
My flow?
No, your flow was good. Anybody?
Oh, words.
Yes. What about the words?
If she
Oh, they're
really,
not my own words.
Yes. They are almost verbatim from the video. And so if we had the opportunity to watch that video a third time, then you could kind of compare your notes for accuracy, but also change the wording so that it is more your own words and not the original. In terms of understanding and listening to what you heard, that was excellent. But remember that there's a third element to this, which is conveying in your own words to someone else, right? And that is equally important as steps 1 and 2 or parts 1 and 2. Okay? All right, so that was excellent. We're gonna try a different kind of exercise, which involves critical reading, and you'll have more time to read it. You won't be listening, but I'm gonna share it on screen with you. Let me stop this share. And I'm gonna give you 15 minutes to write a summary of what you probably need more than 15 minutes. Let me see how you get through the reading first. Let me share my screen. Turn off the sound. Okay, so this is 271 words. And you're asked to summarize it in 125 words. So you're cutting this in just under half. It's late. The benefit of doing this exercise is that you can read this as often as you need to. Now we're working with some time constraints because I want students to be able to share. So I'm going to give you, I would say, 20-ish minutes to work on this because you'll have to read it several times. I'm going to send this to your email addresses now. I'm not putting you into breakout rooms. I'll be right here as you're working and writing. And I will stop you and let you know when time is up. Okay, so this text that you're summarizing is about how we use office space. And then we're going to talk about the homework assignment. Oh. Okay, so this email is going to go to Chanel, Danielle, Dimitri, Leslie, Courtney, Shanique, Ellen, Alexis, Byron, Crystal, and Ricardo. Am I missing anyone? Did I not call someone who's in the class? Those are the email addresses that I have. And before we leave, I need to talk to you about some changes that have happened on the syllabus. Remind me. Okay, I have so many documents on my drive. I cannot find one that I need to upload. There we go. Finally, in the hundreds of documents, I found the right one. Okay, so check your email addresses. I just sent you the written text that you will read and summarize. You are condensing this summary to the text to 125 words. Now, as far as summary writing goes, there is a rule that we follow. If you were given a word limit of 125 words and your summary is, let's say, 115 to 120 words long, that is not a problem. If you go 10 words over 135 words, wouldn't be a problem. Anything greater than that, 140, 150, then points start to be deducted from your grade. Anything below 115, then points start to be deducted. So 10 words over or under is okay, but you do want to get as close to the word limit as possible. So if you could get 125 words exactly, great. And remember, the emphasis is on translating, sorting through, taking in the information so that you can translate and put it in your own words. I'm also going to send you the PowerPoint that we were looking at, but bear in mind that I shared about 4 or 5 slides with you. There are about 14 slides for that entire PowerPoint that you're going to have to review on your own. And these skills you will be required to use for your final exam. Okay? So I put together notes from the text for you. Let me send that. You can begin working on the summary now and check your email after class for the other documents for me. It is 7:30. I'm going to stop you in 20 minutes. How much more time do you think you need? I see Baron's hand also went up. If your mic isn't working, then just type to me in the chat so that I know. Another 5 minutes? Okay, all right. So we'll resume in 5 minutes. Okay, so we are back. I trust that you all had enough time to finish the assignment so that we can talk about your responses. If you're not quite finished with your summary, raise your hand. All right, so I'm going to share on screen the text that you were asked to summarize. Essentially about ergonomics and use of office space for greatest productivity. Once we've gone through this exercise and talked about the main points here, I'm going to discuss your homework assignment, the summary that you will submit next week. Well, Sunday, yeah, so beginning of next week. So which brave student wants to go first? Not brave in the sense that I'm going to tell you a response to pieces, of course not. But brave because a lot of people don't like to share, I understand that. Who wants to volunteer? I know Chanel is on top of things, but Dimitri, awesome. So let's hear from Dimitri. Let's compare let me make my screen larger. And we will compare what Dimitri shares with the original text that's on screen.
Okay. Working in an office space may require a few changes to improve effective communication. One of the main changes can be the layout. Most office spaces are structured for personal space, which is more structured. The new age office designs are more free and open. There's more space and it creates an atmosphere of freedom without the typical look. An open layout is beneficial to not only the floor plan, but allows employees to communicate more freely with each other. This may not be a factual point by researchers. However, it depends on the company itself. Some work environments may enjoy a more peaceful approach, or may not see the need for open communication, or maybe it doesn't help with employee motivation. We can also take a look at another layout perspective, which would be best when working closely with employees. This eliminates longer walks around the office, helps build relationships. Perhaps a vote can be taken while making a decision of the office layout. A workspace should be comfortable and allow employees to be expressive.
Okay, how many words was that, Dimitri?
I sure I gone over Mati by 20.
At least you're honest, because I'm listening to this and thinking, this is not 125 words. Okay,
Yes.
what's good about it? It flows. Okay, I finally have more data. Awesome. Flow. So she's using her own language. Great. And it doesn't sound disjointed. There is one section of the text where you talk about research not supporting it and the word choice is misleading. Where is that? Yes, here. In recent years, research has not supported the claim. So to say that it's not factual suggests that it's a lie. That's a little bit misleading. So I would change the words there. Simply say, even though there is no study to support this, right? Or something along those lines, but to say it's not factual doesn't quite convey the sense of the text, right?
Okay. Yes.
Now, the suggestions at the end, get a vote from employees, That was good. We needed to include, to represent the main points of this text, we needed to include the benefits of an open floor plan and the benefits of a more private or a privacy-oriented workspace where you have cubicles dividing employees. So good. That was a good attempt, but your word count, if you're 20 words over, then that is going to severely impact your grade. So remember what I said about sticking to the prescribed word limit. How
Yes,
many
ma'am.
points would you say would be taken off for being 20 points over the limit? 20 words over the limit?
Can't be 20.
No, not 20 points. But it would cost you between 5 and 10 points.
Okay.
All right?
Yes. ma'am.
No, 20 would put you from A to C. No.
Oh no, we would do that. No.
That's a severe penalty. And then, of course, as the number of words increase, then the number of points increase. So if you're asked for 125 words and something is 200 or 225, then yeah, that's definite from A to D, because you totally missed the point of the assignment, which is to condense, right? Okay,
Yes.
awesome. Can I get somebody else to volunteer their response before we look at the homework assignment?
I could share.
Okay, thank you, Ricardo.
If you're working within a physical office, one of the best steps you can take to improve a workplace communication is to evaluate the way it is designed. In this day and age, there are countless options for office setup and design. Traditionally, offices were designed for privacy and often were broken up into cubicles, making the work environment more private and secluded. Open floor plans have not been proven to increase efficiency or communication. So it's up to the individual, organization, or the workplace preference. Eliminate physical barriers and take an employee survey to ensure employees have a personal space that is their own.
Okay, I'm glad you shared that. Because there's an important point I want to emphasize before you attempt this assignment for a grade. What would we say about Ricardo's summary? What tips or pointers could we give to ensure that he gets the best possible grade on this assignment? Did anyone catch that? What do you think you went wrong, Ricardo? Based on what I said. Your entire first paragraph, if you're working within a physical office, is verbatim from the text. Remember, in a summary, you're using entirely your own words. So no direct quotes, no borrowing language from the text at all. Sometimes there is a word or phrase that cannot be translated, something scientific, like if you're writing a summary on health effects of obesity and the health effects of hypertension, diabetes, and high cholesterol, that phrase may be repeated in your summary. How else do we translate high cholesterol in our own words? How else do we translate diabetes? We may say high blood sugar or hypertension, high blood pressure, but because of the scientific nature of those terms, you will see them over and over in your summary. In a case like this, though, where you're talking about office space and design, there's nothing particularly technical in the language that can't be translated. And so it means that I shouldn't read your summary and see borrowed language from the text, right? Make sure that you use your own words. The rest of you make a note of that too, for people who may have missed that when I said that earlier. That is one of the key skills in summary and note-taking. You translate the original in your own words. So essentially the homework assignment you will have to complete will test three things. Did you understand what you read? And the way you show that is being able to translate it for someone else to understand it, the person who didn't read it, the person who was not involved in this communication. You show that by translating it into your own words, simplifying it for them, right? The next thing you tested on is flow. Does this sound disjointed? Does it sound choppy? Or is it logically organized, cohesive, and does it flow? And then the last thing is, how closely were you able to stick to the word limit? All right, I could tell by listening to your summary, Ricardo, that you were probably very close to about 125 words. So that part of it was good. But remember the borrowed language, right, from the text. You don't want to find yourself in that position. Anyone else would like to share before we look at the homework assignment? Leslie, awesome. So we'll hear from Leslie last, and then.
I wanted to read so that you can go through mine as well, because I think that I may have did some verbatim?
You use words verbatim, word for word from the text? Mhm.
Well, not word for word, but in some sense, I still use some of the words from the text.
Okay.
Okay. Ways to improve workplace environment when in a physical setting is to first evaluate the way an office is designed. Open floor design is more common in today's workspace environments. This concept allows employees to be more engaged with each other and eliminates physical barriers. Although there has been some research that disagrees with efficiency and collaboration among others within the office, it all depends on how the others respond to the dynamics of the setup. Day-to-day work duties may require full intense concentration. Therefore, a quiet environment which provides some form of privacy is more than likely preferred, as well as the need for full employee collaborations. These may not be as necessary, and as a result, an open floor setup may cause distractions. If unsure which setup works best, create a democratic leadership where employees can be a part of this decision. Their input eliminates any stress on your behalf and gives them the opportunity to voice which workspace setup they prefer.
Okay, and I understand why you use the word collaboration a lot from the text, and you talk about physical barriers being eliminated. It's not egregiously wrong. It's not, you have whole chunks, paragraphs, and sentences from the text. And it's very easy to, if you're concerned about how many words from the passage you use, it's very easy to look for synonyms of those words. So collaboration, working together, right? Eliminating physical barriers. You could just say taking down walls or things that prevent communication, right? Or working together. So there are ways to turn those phrases into your own language, but that was good. It flows. I see you implemented a term from the video we watched, the leadership, so that was excellent. Good. How many words was that? That's well over 125 words.
Yeah, it was a lot. 170.
100 and what?
70.
70.
Yeah.
Now, Leslie.
I know.
When I graded, you'd look at me like, what is this woman's problem?
I know.
No. So yeah, that's really a lot, right? Over. So remember, 10 words under or over is not a big deal. Anything more than that, then the grade is going to be negatively impacted. So that is the third skill. And it's hard for me to say in grading this assignment, which one is weighted more. Is it the word count that's more important? Is it the language that's more important? Is it the cohesion and the flow? If I had to assign a value, I would say the language, and then the word count, and then cohesion and flow, which relates to readability. So that might be 10%. The other two would make up 90% of your grade, right? Or maybe even 20% for cohesion and flow, and then 80% for the other two, so 40-40. So you really want to give attention to those three skills that this exercise tests. All right, let me stop. I was not sharing the text all the time. I thought I was sharing the text. I thought I was sharing the passage on screen. My apologies. Now I am actually going to share your homework assignment. Let me pull this up from the myriad of documents I have on my computer. Okay. This is, hold on. The navigation bar is in the way. Where are you? Oh, let me close out some of these documents so I get a better view of the document that I do want to share. Oh, apparently I was sharing my screen. I just couldn't see it. When I closed it out, it said screen sharing has stopped. Okay, so this is the exercise that you are going to complete for a grade. Now, when you look at the syllabus, you have one date on the syllabus, which is the day following our class meeting. So in your case, that would be the 9th of February, tomorrow, but I always extend the date to give you the weekend. I know a lot of you are working, you have quite a bit to do. So the text that you're going to be summarizing is by Chuck Letty, 8 Steps to a Better Conversation. And the instructions ask you to summarize this passage in 200 words. Right? Now, you're cutting this down to less than a third. Oh, this is not a Word document, but I think this is 700 and something words. I was trying to do a word count. I think this is 700 and something words, 717 or something, and you're cutting it down to 200 words. So that is a challenging exercise to cut this down to a third. How do you eliminate 2/3 of this, keep 1/3, and still convey the main ideas of this text? So that is the homework assignment that you will have to complete. I'm going to be emailing this to you. Please, some assignments that I've gotten thus far have been in formats that I cannot edit or open. So please don't send me anything from Google Docs or requiring me to have access to Google Docs to open it. I know that I don't need a Gmail account to access Google Docs, but I don't have a Google Docs account. And it's always a hassle because I try to open it and it says access denied. And it's been a long time since I've been able to access Google Docs. So please don't send Google Docs. The preferred way is a Word attachment. If you don't have Microsoft Word and cannot upload a Word attachment, then simply copy or type your, not copy, because people have been copying screenshots and I can make comments directly on what you submitted if it's an image. So type your summary in the body of your email and send that to me. That's preferred because I can reply to that, make comments, corrections. Okay, so please don't send me a PDF. A PDF is a locked document format. I can't edit it. The program that allows me to edit is on my cell phone. I am old school, almost 50 years old. I can't read from my cell phone. I really cannot. It is an exercise in frustration for me, so I hate editing anything on my cell phone. So Microsoft Word or in the body of the email is fine, right? For those of you who may have some challenges accessing Word, since Word is not for free, okay? All right. Now changes to the syllabus before we end class. You probably noticed, those of you who were really paying attention, you noticed that there was a change already tonight. Your second assignment would have been communicating to persuade. Instead, I moved the summary up, the summary writing assignment up. And so summary writing is no longer assignment 3, it is assignment 2, and persuasive writing is assignment 3. I'm making note of this change because I emailed this syllabus to you, so I can't recall what you have by email already, but please make a note. The weight hasn't changed, just the order of the assignments, okay? And the order in which we focus on these components of the text, all right? That is what I wanted to clarify, those changes to the syllabus. Any questions, comments? Anything I can help you with before we end class for this evening? We have several people in the class who are challenged with personal tragedies and family situations. I won't say who they are, but let's keep each other in prayer and offer encouraging words for every member of the class, because people are dealing with and grappling with a lot, all right? These are some truly trying times that we are living in. So let's remember our classmates in prayer and send positive thoughts and encouragement. Okay, let me take attendance. Before you go, if there are no questions about the syllabus or the assignment. Oh, I do want to clarify the due date. I said it, but I'm going to repeat it. The syllabus says February 9th. Ignore the that date. It's going to be due Sunday, which is the 12th of February, okay? All right, and I'm gonna send the assignment to your email immediately after class. Let me take attendance. Someone is sending in the chat. Okay. So sorry, can you, Danielle, stay behind after the meeting if you're okay? If you have some time to stay behind after the meeting. Okay, today is February 8th. Ricardo Adderley,
Yeah.
Chanel Bellew,
Yeah.
Byron Ferguson. Byron, you still in the meeting?
Yeah.
Danielle Hanna,
Yeah.
Dimitri Nick Johnson,
Yeah.
Courtney Knowles. Courtney? No, Courtney was in the meeting. Crystal Marsh,
Yeah.
Leslie Roberts,
Yeah.
Shanique Russell,
Yeah.
Ellen Strawn, Alexis too. Alexis, are you in the meeting? Okay. Those of you who don't have questions for me, you're free to leave the meeting. I will see you next class. Yeah, if you have a minute, just stay behind. I'm just doing this. Have a good night, everyone. I see Shanique is still in the meeting, and Byron, you have questions for me?
No, sorry, my system was freezing up. I was actually trying to leave.
Okay,
There.
no worries.
Hi.
And let me stop the recording.
Okay.